During those years, I passed through such unbearable terror that I deteriorated into a wild, frightened creature intent only on survival. And I survived. I was raped by orderlies, gnawed on by rats, poisoned by tainted food, and I survived. I was chained into padded cells, strapped into straitjackets, half drowned in ice baths, and I survived. The asylum itself was a steel trap, and I crawled out mutilated, whimpering, and terribly alone. But I did survive. The 3,040 days I spent as an inmate inflicted wounds to my spirit that can never heal. They remain raw, edge, and festering, for I learned that there is no victory in survival, only grief. History cannot agree on the details of 1930s movie star Frances Farmer's 6-year commitment to a state institution. Some say that she was mentally ill, a schizophrenic, a danger to herself and to those around her. Others say that Frances was merely eccentric, an alcoholic involved with the wrong pinko crowd, and ultimately became the victim of a terrible and wicked mother who had no more use for her once Frances's movie career was no longer beneficial. Here, in her own words, Frances recounts the horror she suffered in the Seattle asylum. Will There Really Be a Morning? The autobiography of Frances Farmer. In my 30th year, all my hopes came to an abrupt and frightening halt. On the morning of May 22nd, 1945, I reached the point of no return. I was living in my mother's home in Seattle, and the relations between us had become strained and difficult. We were on guard and explosive. Frances, I'd like you to get dressed and come downstairs. There are some people here who want to meet you. I'll be right down, Mama. Frances, please try to look your prettiest. I wondered who had come to visit. Certainly she felt that they were important, at least to her. So I washed quickly and slipped on a soft cotton dress, and I took a little extra care with my hair and makeup. Hoping to please her, I went downstairs. My mother was in the living room with 2 uniformed men. And I knew. I began to scream and tried to run, but they grabbed me. I fought like a cornered animal, but was easily overpowered and wrestled to the floor. They straddled me, and I felt the rough canvas of a straitjacket wrap around me and buckle into place. I screamed in pain and fright. I screamed every filthy word I knew at my mother, and then, in consuming fear, was reduced to begging her to help me. Oh God, Mama, don't do this. Don't do this to me. A thick roll of gauze shoved in my mouth silenced me, and I thought I would vomit from the gag. And so it was on May 22nd, 1945, that I was delivered bound and gagged to the state asylum like a dog gone mad. After the orderlies left, I looked around the room, studying the other people in it. A woman of about my age screamed and loped across the room, pumping her jacketed shoulders up and down. She jumped on my feet, hammering on my toes with her heels. A toothless old man hopped up and down in front of a younger man, first on one leg, then the other, jerking his head vigorously from side to side, cackling, "Glory, glory, I've seen Jesus, I've seen Jesus!" The woman stopped running and screamed, Where is he?" Jesus was standing on a chair, but had wet his pants in excitement. Undaunted and unaware, his voice rose higher and higher until it rang above the clatter around him. "I am the Lord! Be saved and kneel before the Lord!" A nurse, eyeing me, abruptly said, "You're Frances Farmer, aren't you? I've seen all your pictures. Could I have your autograph?" I cocked open one eye, not quite believing my ears. "Here, you could write on this." She stuck out the yellow pad and the stub of a pencil. I took it and smiled at her, and she responded in the typical fan fashion, embarrassed but pleased. "What's your name?" I asked. "Foster, Marion Foster." I wrote with a great flourish and handed it to her. She snatched it and anxiously began to read, but as she did, her face caught fire. I was pleased with myself and giggled, for I had written, Dear Marion Foster, F you. Sincerely, Francis Farmer. The nurse turned to a dull-eyed trustee and told her to take me to my cot halfway down the room. Prep her for hydro, she said. The trustee steered me through the ward into a small room fitted with 3 bathtubs. Women were in 2 of them, their heads sticking out from canvas sheets stretched tightly across the tubs. Their bathing caps made their heads look like skulls. She tossed me a bathing cap and 2 large wads of cotton. Stuff these in your ears and make sure you plug them up tight, then put the cap on. Before I could organize myself, the trustee had taken down 3 canvas straps from the hook on the wall. She looped one of them across my chest, pinning my arms to my sides until my breath was cut short. The second was wrapped around my thighs and the third my ankles. They picked me up and dropped me into the tub, bruising my spine. The first crash of icy water hit my ankles and slipped rapidly at my legs. I began to shake from the shock of it, screaming and thrashing my body under the sheet, but the more I struggled, the more I realized that I was helplessly restricted in this frozen hell. I began to gnaw at my lip, flinching from the pain of my teeth digging into the wound, but praying that it would take my mind off of the freezing water that burned my body like acid. Hydro was a violent and crushing method of shock treatment, although it was intended to relax the patient. What it really did was assault the body and horrify the mind until both withered with exhaustion. I lay there in this glacier grip until my mind had gone blank. I felt it slipping from me, but I tried to keep it active by thinking of addresses, phone numbers, nursery rhymes. I became confused. I recited the alphabet, but everything was jumbled. I struggled and screamed and